The animal he rescued was actually an alien princess. HFY Story. The storm came without warning, like it always did on the frontier world of Keltar. 9. One moment the sky was dull gray, the next it was alive with screaming wind and blue-white lightning that tore across the plains. Most people hid when the storms came. Evan did the opposite. He pulled his coat tighter and pushed forward through the dust and rain, boots sinking into wet soil. His scanner beeped softly in his hand, its cracked screen flickering. The storm meant danger, but it also meant opportunity. Ships fell from the sky during ion storms, and fallen ships meant salvage. Evan lived alone near the broken flats, a wide stretch of land littered with old wrecks from past conflicts. He survived by stripping them for parts and selling what he could to passing traders. It was not a heroic life. It was not even a safe one. But it was honest, and it was his. A sudden flash lit the horizon. Evan stopped and raised the scanner. A new signal pulsed on the screen, weak but fresh. "Crash," he muttered. The signal was close, too close. Thunder rolled as Evan changed direction, moving toward a cluster of black rocks that jutted from the ground like broken teeth. The wind howled louder, pushing against him, but he kept going. After several minutes he saw it. An escape pod lay half buried in the mud, its hull torn open like it had been clawed apart. Smoke hissed from the wreck, mixing with the rain. The pod was small, not meant for long travel. Whatever had been inside had not planned to land here. Evan approached carefully. Pods sometimes carried traps, and sometimes they carried survivors who did not want to be found. He circled it once, then leaned closer and peered inside. Something moved. Evan froze. At first he thought it was just debris shifting in the wind. Then he saw a shape curled in the corner of the pod. Small, covered in dark fur or feathers, he could not tell which. It trembled, letting out a low, weak sound. An animal. That was Evan's first thought. Some rich travelers carried exotic pets. Some smugglers used living cargo. Either way, this creature was alive. Lightning flashed again, bright enough to hurt his eyes. In that instant, he saw more details. The creature had long limbs, bent at odd angles. Its breathing was fast and shallow. One side of its body was dark with blood. Evan swore under his breath. Leaving it would be easier, smarter. Whatever this thing was, someone might come looking for it. And anyone flying during an ion storm was not friendly. The creature lifted its head slightly. Its eyes opened. They were not animal eyes. They were large, bright, and full of fear. They focused on Evan, tracking him with clear awareness. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a question. "Easy," he said without thinking. "I'm not here to hurt you." The words were meant for himself, as much as for the creature. The storm grew worse, the wind screamed, and the ground shook under another thunderstrike. The escape pod shifted, sinking deeper into the mud. If Evan did nothing, the creature would drown or be crushed. He made his choice. Evan climbed into the pod, ignoring the sparks from broken wires. He reached for the creature slowly. It flinched, but did not try to bite or claw him. When his hands touched its fur, he felt warmth. It was alive. Very alive. The creature weighed less than he expected. Evan lifted it against his chest and backed out of the pod just as another crack of thunder split the air. He staggered under the wind but kept moving, holding the creature close to protect it from the rain. By the time he reached his shelter, Evan was soaked and shaking. The shelter was little more than a reinforced metal hut built into the rocks. but it was dry and shielded from the worst of the storm. He sealed the door and dropped to his knees, breathing hard. The creature lay still in his arms. "Hey," Evan said quietly, "don't do that." He set it down on an old blanket near the heater. Up close, it looked even stranger. The fur was not fur at all, but fine strands that shifted color slightly in the light. Its limbs ended in hands, not paws. 5 fingers, long and delicate. Definitely not an animal. The creature's eyes fluttered open again. It looked around the shelter, then back at Evan. Its gaze was sharp despite the pain. "You're safe," Evan said, though he was not sure it was true. At least for now. He grabbed his med kit and knelt beside it. The wound on its side was deep, but clean, likely from metal shrapnel. Evan worked carefully, cleaning and sealing it as best he could. The creature tensed but did not resist. It watched his hands closely, as if memorizing every move. When he finished, Evan leaned back and let out a slow breath. "There," he said, "that should keep you alive." The creature made a soft sound again. This time, it was different. It almost sounded like relief. Outside, the storm began to fade. The thunder grew distant. The wind softened. Evan stood and poured himself a cup of water, then hesitated. After a moment, he poured another and held it out, slowly. The creature stared at the cup, then at Evan. It reached out with a trembling hand and wrapped its fingers around the metal. Its hand felt warm, human warm. It drank carefully, then looked up at him again. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the dim light of the shelter. "Can you understand me?" Evan asked. The creature tilted its head. Its lips parted slightly, as if it was trying to shape a sound it had never made before. Nothing came out. Evan nodded. "Yeah, didn't think so." He sat against the wall, watching it. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the hum of the heater. The creature seemed to relax, though it never fully took its eyes off him. Then Evan's scanner beeped. He stiffened and grabbed it. The screen lit up, showing multiple signals high above the planet's surface. Not debris, not storms. Ships. They were descending from orbit, moving fast and in formation. Evan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The creature reacted instantly. It pushed itself upright despite the pain and looked toward the ceiling, as if it could see through the metal and rock. Fear washed over its face, raw and unmistakable. It shook its head and made a sharp sound, almost a warning. "Someone looking for you?" Evan asked. The creature looked back at him. For a moment, something changed in its expression. Fear turned into urgency. It reached out and grabbed Evan's sleeve with surprising strength. Its mouth moved again. "Please," it whispered. The word was rough and broken, but it was clear. Evan stared at it, shock running through him. "You can talk," he said slowly. The creature swallowed. It nodded once, weakly. "Hide," it said, the word coming out like it hurt to say. "They cannot find me." Evan looked at the scanner again. The signals were spreading, scanning the surface. "Who are they?" he asked. The creature hesitated. Its eyes flicked to the door, then back to Evan. "Hunters," it said quietly. "If they take me, you will die too." Evan let out a short, humorless laugh. "Great. That's just great." He stood and moved quickly, pulling a loose panel from the floor and revealing a hidden compartment beneath the shelter. It was meant for storing valuable salvage. Now it would have to do for something much more dangerous. "All right," he said. "We'll hide you, for now." As he helped the creature into the compartment, a deep hum echoed through the sky above. The sound of engines. Evan sealed the panel just as a shadow passed over the shelter. Whatever he had pulled from that escape pod was no animal, and the galaxy had just come looking for it. Evan spent the night on edge. Every gust of wind, every crack of thunder, and even the slightest movement outside the shelter made him tense. He barely slept. The creature he had rescued, which now he knew could speak, remained quiet in the hidden compartment. Evan had started calling it Esterst Lyra after a name it whispered while unconscious. Lyra seemed weak, but her eyes were sharp, observing everything. There was intelligence behind them, unlike any animal he had ever seen. By morning the storm had passed. The sky was pale and thin rays of sunlight reached the shelter through cracks in the rock. Evan opened the panel and helped Lyra sit upright. Her movements were careful and deliberate. She winced as she shifted, but there was a dignity in her posture that made Evan pause. "You should not be here," she said quietly, her voice soft but commanding. Evan nodded. "Yeah, I figured that out after last night. I don't even know what you are yet, but I can tell you're not from around here." Lyra looked at him steadily. "I am not just not from here. I am from far away, and I am being hunted." Evan frowned. "Hunted? By who?" Lyra's eyes darkened. "By those who killed my family. By the ones who took my world." Evan swallowed. He had dealt with smugglers, warlords, and mercenaries before, but nothing like this. He had no idea what he was getting into, but he knew one thing. He could not leave her out there, not after rescuing her. He offered her some water and simple food he had kept in storage. Lyra accepted carefully, tasting the food as if it were foreign to her. She had lived in a different world, he realized, one with customs and technology far beyond anything he knew.
"You must understand," she said, her voice tense. "If I am captured, your world will be destroyed. The beings who seek me consider humans
Insignificant. They will not hesitate." Evan's stomach twisted. The storm, the escape pod, the strange creature. It was already too much. Now, the fate of the planet itself? It was a lot to take in. But he could not just stand there. Not after she trusted him. "I get it," he said. "We'll figure something out. But you have to trust me, and I have to know everything you can tell me."
Who are they? What do they want? Lyra hesitated.
Then she spoke. "I am Lyra. I was a princess of my world, and I am the last of my line. My people were betrayed by a usurper named Vale. He wants me dead because my survival threatens his rule. He controls ships, armies, hunters, everything you can imagine. And he will not stop until I am captured." Evan's mind raced. A princess? From another world? It sounded impossible, but the seriousness in her eyes told him she spoke the truth. "I need allies," Lyra continued.
You cannot face him alone. Evan knew she was right. He had survived in this harsh world because he worked alone.
But this was different. This was not just survival.
This was war. He thought of Asterisk Nora, a mechanic he had worked with in the past.
She was clever, resourceful, and fearless. And then there was Asterisk Captain Reese, a retired soldier who lived on the outskirts of the plains. He owed Evan a favor and had experience with weapons and strategy. If anyone could help him, it was them. "I know 2 people who can help," Evan said. "But we have to move carefully. If Vale's hunters are already here, one wrong move and we're done." Lyra nodded. "We do not have a choice. They are close, I can feel it." Evan prepared their departure. He packed basic supplies, some weapons and tools, and guided Lyra through hidden paths to avoid the open plains. Every step was tense. The slightest noise could give them away. Hours passed before they reached the first outpost where Nora worked. She was surprised to see Evan, and even more surprised by the small humanoid figure with fur-like strands sitting quietly beside him. "Who is this?" she asked, brushing grease from her hands. "This is Lyra," Evan said. "She needs help. We're in serious trouble." Nora's eyes widened, and she glanced around before speaking. "Serious trouble? Evan, this looks like something from a nightmare." Lyra spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I am being hunted. Your assistance may cost you, but I have no other choice." Nora hesitated, then nodded. "All right. If you're in danger, we help. But we need a plan." Evan and Nora discussed their options quietly. They would need to move Lyra to a safe place, far from the plains and any patrols. They needed weapons and supplies, and someone with military experience. That meant finding Captain Reese. Finding Reese was not easy. He had retreated from the world and its troubles. Evan had to navigate through dangerous territories, avoiding old rivals and scavenger gangs. Lyra remained quiet during most of the journey, observing humans closely. She asked questions about the world, the people, and why humans continued to survive in such harsh conditions. Evan answered simply, though he could see her struggle to understand human ways. When they finally reached Reese, he was suspicious, as expected. He eyed Lyra carefully, asking questions that Evan could barely answer. But after hearing her story and sensing the urgency, Reese agreed to help. "If what you say is true," he said, "then we have to move fast. Too many variables, too much risk. But humans have a stubborn streak, and maybe that streak will save us." With their small group formed, Evan, Lyra, Nora, and Reese set up a temporary safe base in an abandoned underground facility. It was hidden, fortified, and away from the main population. Here, Lyra revealed more about her world and the danger she faced. She showed them a small device, a crystal-like object that could send signals across star systems. Vale would recognize it immediately, which was why she carried it secretly. Evan studied the device, fascinated. It was far beyond human technology. Light and energy moved through it in patterns he had never seen. He realized that Lyra's warnings were not exaggerations. If Vale came for her, nothing on this planet could stop him. As night fell, they heard a distant hum outside the facility. All four froze. Evan grabbed a flashlight and peered outside. There was nothing, just the shadows of rocks in the moonlight. But Lyra shivered. "They are close," she whispered. "They always know where I am." Reese nodded. "Then we prepare. Tomorrow we start moving." "We can't stay here long." Evan sat next to Lyra, watching her. She looked almost fragile, yet there was an unspoken strength in her gaze. He did not understand everything about her, but he knew one thing for sure. She needed him, and he would not let her face Vale alone. Hours passed. The facility was silent except for the occasional drip of water and the soft hum of the security systems Nora had managed to activate. Lyra rested, her eyes closing briefly. But Evan stayed awake. He thought about the signals, the hunters, and the unknown reaches of space where Vale commanded his forces. He thought about humans. Weak, maybe, but adaptable, clever, and brave. That stubborn streak Captain Reese mentioned, it ran deep in people like him. And he realized that Lyra had no idea how dangerous humans could be when they were protecting someone they cared about. A sudden sound made him snap to attention. Outside there was a low, mechanical whir. Sensors picked it up, faint but clear. Someone was moving toward the entrance. Evan signaled to Nora and Reese. They were ready. Lyra's eyes opened wide. "They are here," she said quietly, "and they are not alone. Then we fight smart, and we don't lose." The whir grew louder, echoing in the facility. Shadows moved outside, shapes too large to be human. Evan clenched his fists, ready. Lyra's small hand brushed his arm, not in fear, but in trust. That small gesture gave him courage. Whoever these hunters were, whoever Vale was, they had underestimated humans. They had no idea how far Evan and the people with him were willing to go to protect someone they considered helpless. The mechanical sound stopped, replaced by silence. Too quiet. Evan's heart pounded. He glanced at Lyra. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, reflecting both fear and determination. She was not just a survivor. She was someone the galaxy wanted, and she had chosen humans, at least for now. Evan raised his hand, signaling the others. This was only the beginning. The hunt was not over. Vale's forces would not rest, and neither would they. And as long as Lyra stayed with them, humans would not give up. Not now, not ever. Evan, Lyra, Nora, and Reese left the underground facility at dawn. The sky was gray and clouded, the plains around them quiet and empty, yet the tension in the air was thick. Lyra walked beside Evan, her movements cautious, but her eyes were alert, scanning everything. Every shadow, every small sound could hide danger. They had decided to move east, toward an old mining settlement that had been abandoned for decades. It was far from major roads, and the ruins offered a place to hide, at least temporarily. But the journey was long, and Vale's forces were already in the area. Lyra kept quiet for most of the walk, only speaking when necessary. But Evan could see her observing humans closely. Every step, every motion, every way they adapted to the harsh environment fascinated her. "I don't understand," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Your species is fragile, yet you survive everything." "How?" Evan shrugged. "We adapt. We find a way. Sometimes we die, sometimes we survive. But we keep going." Lyra's eyes widened. "You are not weak. I was told humans are insignificant, that they cannot resist, that they are a primitive species, doomed to be controlled by others. Yet, I see something different." Evan gave a small smile. "That's because humans do the unexpected. Sometimes we win even when we shouldn't."
Nora carried supplies and weapons.
She glanced at Lyra curiously. "So, you're royalty or something?"
And Vale wants to kill you.
"Yes," Lyra replied.
I am the last of my line.
"My world was taken by Vale. If I am captured, humans may not survive either. He does not care for life except his own." Reese, who had been walking silently, finally spoke. "Then we have to move fast and think ahead. You can't fight him alone, and we cannot afford mistakes." Evan nodded. He had already begun forming a plan. They needed a safe place to hide, weapons, and maybe allies from other humans who could fight alongside them. But first, they had to survive the journey. Every hour brought risk. Every hour could bring hunters. By late morning, they encountered the first signs of pursuit. Small drones moved in the distance, scanning the plains. Evan pointed them out.
"Hunters! And they are getting closer."
Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They have sensors that can detect my energy. We must avoid them, or we will be found." They took a narrow path through jagged rocks, moving slowly and silently. Lyra clung to Evan, her small hand brushing against his arm for guidance. She had trust in humans now, and that trust weighed heavily on him. If he failed, it would not just be her life at stake. It could be the survival of the planet. As they advanced, Lyra shared more about her world. Her planet had technology far beyond human understanding. Cities floated above clouds. Ships traveled faster than light. Weapons could destroy entire landscapes. And her people had once considered humanity nothing more than a curiosity, too weak to matter. "But then I met you," she said softly, "and I realized humans are not what the record said. You are dangerous, clever, determined." Evan laughed quietly. "Dangerous?"
You mean stubborn. That's what keeps us alive.
"And sometimes it scares people who think they can control us." Hours passed. The drones did not find them, but they were a constant threat. Evan led them through valleys and cliffs, always watching the skies. They moved cautiously, hiding when the drones hovered too close. Lyra followed instructions perfectly, though her curiosity often made her look toward the machines. Each time, Evan had to remind her to focus on survival. By evening, they reached the ruins of the mining settlement. Crumbling buildings and broken machinery littered the area. It was quiet, too quiet, but it was far from main roads, and there were hiding spots everywhere. They set up a temporary camp inside one of the old warehouses, barricading doors and windows. Nora examined old power systems and managed to reactivate some lights. Reese checked weapons and improvised traps around the perimeter. Lyra sat quietly, studying human tools and technology. She held one of the simple rifles Nora had found, turning it over in her hands. It was crude compared to what she had known, but she seemed to understand its use immediately. "I have never seen weapons like this," she said. "They are simple, yet effective." Evan smiled. "Humans make the best of what they have. Sometimes it's not about the power. It's about how you use it." Night came. They took turns keeping watch. Evan felt a strange connection with Lyra. She was not human, but she was learning to trust him, relying on him, and that trust was heavy. Every time he heard a noise outside, he thought of what would happen if they failed. Lyra's life was tied to his actions now. Suddenly, a noise outside broke the silence. Something moved among the ruins. Evan grabbed a flashlight and aimed it toward the sound. Shadows shifted, and faint lights glowed in the distance. Drones. They were scouting the area, searching for Lyra. Reese whispered, "They found us. Get ready." Evan and Nora positioned themselves by the doors. Lyra stayed low, trembling slightly. Her small hand brushed Evan's arm again, not in fear, but as a silent plea to keep her safe. The drones circled the building. They were larger than the ones they had seen before, equipped with sensors that could detect heat and movement. Evan and Reese held their fire. They could not risk revealing themselves too early. The drones passed close, scanning the area, and then moved away, continuing their patrol. Breathing heavily, Evan leaned against the wall. "That was close," he muttered. Lyra nodded, her eyes wide. "They are relentless. We cannot stay here long."
We must keep moving. Nora checked supplies.
"We can make it to the next safe zone by morning, but we need to move before daylight. They will return." Evan agreed. "We leave at first light. Stay quiet, stay low, and trust each other." The rest of the night passed in tense silence. Lyra remained alert, her eyes never fully closing. Evan stayed awake most of the night, listening to every sound, anticipating every movement outside the warehouse. At dawn, they began their journey again. The plains stretched before them, open and dangerous. The sun was just rising, painting the landscape in pale gold. The air was crisp, carrying distant noises from the plains. Lyra walked beside Evan, stronger now after a night of rest. She had begun to understand human determination. She watched them carefully, noticing how Evan adapted to the environment, how Rhys anticipated threats, and how Nora improvised solutions quickly. She realized humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability made them dangerous. Perhaps that was why she had survived so far. Hours into the journey, they spotted smoke on the horizon. Evan froze. "That's a camp," he whispered. "Could be friendly, could be hostile. Stay low." They approached cautiously, hiding behind rocks and ridges. Lyra followed instructions perfectly, keeping quiet. As they got closer, Evan recognized the symbols on the tents. Not human. Vale's forces. "They are here," Lyra said, her voice tense.
"They are searching for me." Evan signaled the others to hold back. They watched the camp from a distance.
Drones hovered above. Patrols walked between the tents. They could not take them head on. It would be suicide. Rhys whispered, "We need a plan. We can't fight them all. But we can distract them, sneak past, or create confusion." Evan nodded. He knew humans had one advantage: creativity under pressure. If they were careful and clever, they could escape without a fight. But the risk was high. Lyra studied the camp, analyzing patterns. "They move in predictable ways," she said. "We can use this. I can guide you." Evan glanced at her. "Then let's do it." Quick and quiet. No mistakes. For the next hour, they moved through the plains, using Lyra's guidance. They avoided patrols, slipped past drones, and ducked into cover whenever necessary. The tension was almost unbearable. Every step could be the one that exposed them. Finally, as the sun rose higher, they reached the edge of a canyon. It offered natural cover and a safer path forward. Evan allowed himself a small sigh of relief. They had made it, for now. Lyra looked at the horizon, then back at Evan. "Humans are remarkable," she said quietly. "I have underestimated you. Perhaps I was wrong about your species." Evan smiled, tired but determined. "We survive because we have to, and we fight for those we care about. That's our way." As they moved into the canyon, Evan knew the hunt was far from over. Vale's forces would continue searching. They would face dangers, challenges, and impossible odds. But one thing was certain: humans would not give up. And as long as Lyra trusted them, they would fight with everything they had. In the shadows of the canyon, Lyra realized something new. Humans were not weak. They were clever, stubborn, and dangerous in ways her people had never imagined. And for the first time, she felt hope. Perhaps with these humans, she could survive. Perhaps together they could fight back. The canyon gave them cover, but it also trapped them. Tall stone walls rose on both sides, blocking the sky. The path was narrow and twisted, forcing them to move in a single line. Evan walked first, scanning ahead. Rhys followed, then Nora, and Lyra stayed close to Evan, never more than a step behind. The air inside the canyon felt heavy. Sounds echoed strangely, making it hard to tell where anything came from. Even a small rock falling sounded loud enough to attract attention. Evan slowed their pace, raising his hand whenever he sensed danger. Lyra watched him closely, learning how humans read their surroundings. "They will search here," Lyra said quietly. "This path leads where they believe we will go." Rhys nodded. "Then they'll expect us to run," which means we don't. They reached a wider section of the canyon where old metal remains lay scattered across the ground. Broken machines, rusted containers, and pieces of forgotten human equipment were half buried in sand. Evan recognized the place. Years ago, miners had tried to dig deep here and failed. "This could work," Evan said. "Plenty of scrap. Plenty of cover." Nora's eyes lit up. "And plenty of parts." They stopped and began working quickly. Nora and Evan pulled apart old machines, collecting wires, power cells, and metal plates. Reese set up simple traps using tension lines and loose rocks. Nothing advanced, nothing fancy. Just enough to slow someone down. Lyra watched, confused. "You plan to fight them here?" "No," Evan replied. "We plan to confuse them." Lyra tilted her head.
Your technology is very basic. Evan smiled slightly. That's what makes it dangerous. Within an hour, they had turned the area into a maze of hidden obstacles.
Nothing lethal, but enough to disrupt movement and create noise. Evan also adjusted an old power unit, overloading it just enough to release a strong energy signal. Lyra's eyes widened. That signal will attract them. "That's the idea," Evan said. "They'll think you're here." Before Lyra could argue, a distant hum echoed through the canyon. "Ships, more than before. They are closer than I thought," she whispered. Reese checked his weapon. "Then it's time." Evan turned to Lyra. "You trust us?" She hesitated only for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." They moved deeper into the canyon, leaving the trap zone behind. Not long after, shadows passed overhead and beams of light scanned the ground. Val's hunters had arrived. The first patrol entered the trap area. A loud crash echoed as one of them triggered a falling plate of metal. Another slipped on loose stone, dropping their weapon. Confusion spread quickly. Drones moved in, scanning wildly as the false energy signal pulsed. From a distance, Evan watched silently. "They're taking the bait." But the relief did not last long. A deeper, stronger signal cut through the air. Lyra stiffened, her face drained of color. "That is Vale's ship," she said. "He is here." Evan felt his chest tighten. "Here? Now?" "Yes." He does not trust others to finish this. The ground trembled as a massive shadow passed above the canyon. The air vibrated with power far beyond anything human ships could produce. Even Reese, hardened by years of war, looked uneasy. Vale's voice echoed through the canyon, amplified and cold. "You cannot hide forever. Surrender the royal survivor, and the humans will be spared." Lyra clenched her fists. "He lies." Evan knew that voice was meant to scare them, and it worked. But fear also sharpened his focus. "We keep moving," he said. No response, no surrender. They hurried forward, but Vale's forces adapted quickly. Drones blocked the canyon exit ahead. Soldiers dropped down from above, cutting off paths. The trap had slowed them, but not enough. Reese fired first, hitting a drone and sending sparks into the air. Nora followed, disabling another with a precise shot. Evan pulled Lyra behind a large rock as energy blast struck the canyon walls. The noise was overwhelming. Stone shattered. Dust filled the air. Lyra covered her head, trembling. "I never wanted this," she said. "Humans should not die for me." Evan looked at her sharply. "That's not your choice to make." They fought their way forward, using cover and teamwork. Humans moved unpredictably, changing positions, using angles and timing instead of raw power. Vale's soldiers were strong and well-equipped, but they followed strict patterns. Patterns Evan began to exploit. Still, the numbers were too great. A blast struck close, throwing Evan to the ground. His ears rang as he struggled to stand. When he looked up, he saw Lyra surrounded. Soldiers closed in on her, weapons raised. "Stop!" she shouted. "We're..."
Everything froze. I will go with you, Lyra said, stepping forward.
Evan's heart dropped. No. She turned to him, her eyes filled with sorrow and resolve. If I stay, you all die. This is the only way. Before anyone could stop her, she stepped into the open. Bale's soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, clearly surprised. A holographic image appeared above them. Bale himself, tall, armored, and expressionless.
You chose wisely, Vale said. Bind her. Evan tried to rush forward, but Reese held him back.
We can't win this fight, Reese said through clenched teeth. Lyra was restrained, energy cuffs locking around her wrists.
She did not resist. She only looked back once, meeting Evan's eyes. I am sorry, she said softly. Then they took her. The ships lifted away, carrying Lyra into the sky. The canyon fell silent, except for the crackle of damaged stone and metal. Nora lowered her weapon slowly. We failed. Evan stared at the empty sky, his hands shaking. No, he said. We're not done. Reese looked at him. You have a plan? Evan's jaw tightened. They think humans will give up when we lose. That's their mistake. He turned back toward the scrap-filled canyon. We build.
We prepare, and then we take her back.
High above the planet, inside Vale's ship, Lyra stood alone in a cold chamber. She felt the engines hum beneath her feet. She had saved the humans, or so she believed. But as the ship jumped into deep space, she remembered Evan's words. Humans fight for those they care about. For the first time since her capture, Lyra felt afraid, not for herself, but for Vale, because she now understood something her people never had. Humans do not surrender. The canyon felt empty after Lyra was taken. The wind moved through broken metal and stone, making low, hollow sounds. Ah, Evan stood where she had last been, staring at the sky until his eyes burned. Nora and Reese stayed silent, knowing words would not help. After a long moment, Evan finally turned away. His face was hard now, different from before. Something had changed. We go back, he said.
Nora frowned. Back where?
To people, Evan replied. To every human who owes a favor, who hates bullies, who doesn't like being told they are weak. Reese crossed his arms. You're talking about starting a war. Evan met his gaze. No, they started it.
We're just answering they moved fast.
There was no time to mourn. Vale had Lyra, and every second mattered. They returned through the canyon and into open land, using back routes and old paths only scavengers knew. Along the way, Evan sent short messages using outdated human comms, broadcasting on frequencies most people ignored. The message was simple. An alien force has taken someone under human protection. They think humans are weak. They think no one will respond. Prove them wrong. Evan did not know how many would hear it, or how many would care, but he knew humans. Someone always listened. By the time they reached an old relay station, the first replies came in. A mining crew from the southern belt, a cargo captain who hated alien tariffs, a group of settlers who had lost family to off-world raids years ago. Nora stared at the console. Evan, people are answering. He nodded. They always do. Meanwhile, far above the planet, Lyra stood inside a tall chamber of smooth black metal. Energy fields shimmered around her, cold and silent. She was no longer disguised. Her true form was visible now, elegant and glowing faintly with inner light. Vale stood across from her, surrounded by guards. You traded yourself for them. Vale said. A foolish choice.
They would have died, Lyra replied. Vale laughed softly.
They will die anyway, slowly. When I decide humans are no longer useful, Lyra's eyes hardened.
You still fear them. That is why you came yourself.
Vial stepped closer. I came because symbols matter. And you are one? He turned away. Prepare the broadcast. Let the galaxy see the last royal kneel blows. Lyra's heart sank. She knew what he planned. A public execution, a message to every system. Back on the planet, Evan's group reached the relay station. It was old, barely functional, but Nora worked fast, restoring power and strengthening the signal. Reese organized weapons, training volunteers as they arrived in small ships, ground vehicles, and even patched together aircraft. They were not soldiers. They were miners, traders, farmers, mechanics, ordinary humans. But they were angry. Evan stood before them, not on a stage, but on a crate. An alien warlord took someone under our protection, he said. He thinks we won't fight back. He thinks we are small. The crowd listened. We don't have better ships, Evan continued. We don't have stronger weapons. But we have something they don't understand. When humans choose to stand together, we don't stop. A murmur spread through the group. We're going after her, Evan said, not because she's royalty, because she trusted us. Silence followed. Then one voice spoke, then another. Then many. We're in. Within hours, the relay station became a base. Ships were repaired, weapons modified, engines pushed past safe limits. Human engineers did what they always did. They turned limits into suggestions. Nora worked beside Evan, barely stopping. We can't match their shields, she said. But we can overload their sensors, Reese added. They won't expect civilians to attack a flagship. Evan smiled grimly. Good. In space, Vale's fleet gathered. Massive ships hovered in formation, clean and perfect. Vale watched reports calmly. Human response? He asked. Minimal, an officer replied. Uncoordinated. Primitive vessels. Vale nodded. Then they are irrelevant. He did not see the full picture. He did not see how human ships changed course mid-flight, how pilots rewrote targeting software on the move, how engineers used civilian tools to create weapons that should not work. Lyra felt the shift before she saw it. The ship vibrated differently. Alarms whispered instead of screamed. Something was coming. She closed her eyes and remembered Evan's face, his stubborn certainty. Why? His refusal to give up. Back at the relay station, Evan opened a wideband broadcast, not just to humans, to everyone. This is a human message, he said. You took someone who trusted us.
We are coming. If you stand with Vale, move aside.
If you don't, watch closely. The fleet launched. Human ships jumped into space in messy, uneven waves. They were slow, loud, and badly painted, but there were many of them. Vale's officers stared at their screens. Ah, sir, one said quietly. They are not retreating. The first clash was chaos. Human ships darted, spun, and rammed. They fired modified mining lasers, explosive cargo pods, and improvised missiles. Vale's fleet was stronger, but slow to react. Humans did not fight to win cleanly. They fought to disrupt. Inside her chamber, Lyra felt the impact of battle. The ship shook violently, power flickered. She smiled for the first time since her capture. "They came," she whispered. Vale turned toward the noise, anger flashing across his face. "Impossible!" On the bridge of a patched-together human ship, Evan held tight as alarms blared. "All units," he said calmly. Phase 2. Draw them away from the core ship. Human ships scattered, forcing Vale's fleet to respond. And for the first time, Vale felt it.
Uncertainty, because the humans were not running.
They were adapting, and they were getting closer. Far below the flagship's hull, something small and human-made attached itself silently. The real fight was about to begin. The battle raged in space. Human ships, messy and uneven, weaved through Vale's perfect formations. They fired improvised weapons, detonated cargo pods, and hacked systems on the move. Every attack was unpredictable. Every move was human. Every move was dangerous. Evan held the controls of the flagship's small assault craft, his hands steady despite alarms flashing red. He glanced at the others in his vessel, each focused, determined. Nora monitored energy flows. Reese aimed weapons, and behind them, volunteers from mining colonies, traders, and engineers worked together seamlessly. "Lyra," Evan said, glancing at the communications screen. "You still with us?" "I am," she replied, her voice calm and clear despite the ship shaking. "They are surprised by your persistence." "Keep it up." Evan smiled grimly. "Persistence is what humans do best." They approached the flagship slowly, using the chaos of battle to hide. Small ships darted in front, distracting sensors. Larger vessels flanked the edges, firing at supply ships to draw attention. And underneath, Evan piloted his craft toward a small maintenance hatch, one he knew could bypass the internal security. Inside Vale's flagship, alarms screamed. Guards ran through corridors trying to stabilize the ship. Vale himself watched from the bridge, cold and furious. His control was slipping. Every human maneuver was unexpected, breaking his patterns, undermining his calculations. "They are clever," Vale said. "Far too clever for a primitive species." One of his officers hesitated. "Sir, their numbers are growing. More are coming from the planet. We cannot hold them." Vale's face darkened. "Then we will do what must be done. Destroy them all. Start with the humans closest to the princess." Back in the maintenance shaft, Evan and Reese moved silently, weapons ready. Lyra had given them guidance, showing the safest path through the ship, while guards were distracted by battle outside. Every step was tense. One wrong move, and they could be detected. They reached a large door. Behind it, Lyra's chamber. Evan looked at Reese. "You ready?" Reese nodded. "Let's finish this." They opened the door. The room was empty. Lyra stood at the center, energy cuffs still on her wrists, her posture calm and regal. Vale's guards were repositioning near the exit. "Hello, humans," Lyra said. "You came." Evan stepped forward. "We never give up." Lyra's cuffs glowed briefly, then powered down. She had disabled them remotely using her internal energy. Vale's voice boomed through the ship. "Do not touch her." Evan did not answer. He signaled Reese and Nora. They moved in unison, using the element of surprise. Guards were disarmed quickly, outmaneuvered by humans who did not follow predictable patterns. Lyra joined them, using her own abilities to disable energy fields and prevent reinforcements from entering. Vael's frustration grew as alarms continued. The humans had reached the core of his ship, and they were not stopping. "Impossible," he muttered. "This cannot happen." Evan led Lyra toward the main exit. Outside, human ships had created a corridor, shielding the assault team from the flagship's main defenses. Volunteers fired and distracted, keeping the enemy occupied. The flagship's engines roared. Vale's forces tried to retaliate, but humans moved unpredictably, exploiting gaps, using every weakness. Every damaged part became an opportunity. Every miscalculation of Vale became another victory for the humans. Lyra looked at Evan. They are learning. They adapt. Evan nodded. That's the way humans fight. In the chaos, Vale attempted to leave the bridge, moving to intercept. Lyra's voice rang clear. It is over, Vale. You cannot control this species. You cannot destroy them. Bael turned, his expression unreadable. They will die. I will see it. Then a loud explosion rocked the flagship. Human ships had breached critical systems, disabling shields and cutting off escape routes. Small teams moved inside, releasing volunteers who had been trapped. The pressure inside the ship shifted. Evan guided Lyra and the team to the upper hangar bay. Ships waited. They were battered, scratched, but functional. Outside, Bale's main fleet was in disarray, unable to coordinate attacks properly. They boarded the ships, and Lyra's presence amplified the human effort. Her energy interface disrupted systems across the flagship. Even Vale could not anticipate it. The humans jumped into space, retreating to safe distances. They regrouped, taking stock. Lyra stood beside Evan, calm but resolute. She looked at the fleet below and smiled faintly. They underestimated humans, she said. Yes, Evan replied. They always do. The battle continued in space, but Vale's forces were disorganized. Human ships pressed forward carefully, striking weaknesses and retreating when needed. Slowly, methodically, they forced Vale into a corner. His fleet could not withstand the unpredictable human strategy combined with their ingenuity. Finally, Vale's flagship was isolated, systems failing, engines damaged. Lyra watched calmly from Evan's ship. It ends now, she said. Evan piloted closer. Human ships circled the flagship, ready for a final assault if needed. Vale's defenses collapsed. The humans did not need more than that. Vale's voice boomed in defiance, but the humans ignored him. They had achieved the goal. Lyra was free. His fleet was defeated. His control over her and the galaxy was broken. Evan docked a small craft to the flagship, entering with Reese and Nora. They did not face resistance. The guards had surrendered or fled. Lyra stepped forward. She raised her hand, energy flowing outward. Systems shut down across the ship. Bale was powerless now, trapped in his own vessel. You will go nowhere, Lyra said firmly, and you will not harm anyone ever again. Vale's expression was one of disbelief. Humans? Impossible. They are not impossible, Lyra said, looking at Evan. They are a species that protects what they care about. They are unstoppable when they fight for each other. With that, she disabled the remaining systems on the flagship, leaving it immobilized. Human ships took positions, ensuring Vale could not escape. The galaxy had seen something new that day. Humans were not weak. Humans were not insignificant. Humans were a force capable of defying impossible odds. Evan stood beside Lyra, watching Vale's ship. You okay? He asked. Lyra smiled.
I am, because you all never gave up.
And that is what saved me.
Nora and Reese nodded, exhaustion and relief mixing in their expressions.
They had fought hard, risked everything, and survived. And most importantly, They had proven that humanity's stubborn courage could stand against the greatest threats. The humans returned to their ships, some repaired, some damaged, but all alive. The galaxy would remember this battle not for the technology or firepower, but for the determination, bravery, and loyalty of humans. I am free, and yet I do not return to my throne. I remain with humanity. They have shown me what my people never could. Evan shrugged. Humans are like that. We protect our own, even when the odds are impossible. Lyra nodded, a quiet smile on her face. She realized that humans were unpredictable, fierce, and clever. She realized that they had become her allies, not just protectors, but equals. Vale remained trapped, powerless, while the human fleet spread across space, celebrating their victory and reinforcing the lesson learned. The galaxy had changed. A species that had once been dismissed was now recognized, feared, and respected. And it had all begun with one human saving a wounded creature in a storm. Evan looked at Lyra. Think we'll ever get a quiet day again? Lyra laughed softly. I doubt it, but I would follow humans anywhere.